Welcome to Running the Defense, your weekly dose of insights, strategies, and real-world stories from the front lines of insurance defense. I'm Greg Lois. Join me as we explore what it really takes to run a great defense firm.
If you're waiting for your clients to tell you how well you're delivering on your service promise, you're waiting too long and you're not doing what you need to be doing. Today, we're going to talk about measurement. I'm going to talk about external measurements, and I'm going to talk about internal measurements. And my goal for today is to talk through, what are the measurements that we're looking at? What do we think are the important data points? What do we think are the important metrics that we're following? What's important to us in making sure that we're delivering a top quality service? I'm going to talk about this from the perspective of a mid-sized law firm owner. We have 50 attorneys. We have 130 total employees. And so, this conversation today is going to be about how we learned to institutionalize quality measurement and quality assurance and making sure that our clients were as successful as they could possibly be in our business. Now, I think this applies to any business, anytime, anywhere. And it's, not important whether you're delivering a service like we are or you're delivering a product. It's how do you measure that and make sure that the quality that you're promising and the quality that your customer or client is expecting actually gets delivered. And it's more complicated when you start to unravel this. And so I'm going to talk about what are the important things that we're looking at when we're thinking about delivering a quality service, and how do we do it? Because that's the hard part. That's the part that I was not able to find a book that said, okay, you're a law firm, here are the metrics you follow, and here are the standards that you implement, and here's how you make sure quality is baked into the service. In fact, I've read a lot of books on how to deliver a better service as an attorney, but very few of them talked about auditing or measuring your own work. And so let's talk about that today, because I think this is an important topic. I think it's an interesting topic. And again, I think this applies to any business or line of business that you're in. Now, I run and own a law firm, and we have a very specific mission. We serve and defend employers that are being sued by their own employees, right? That's our mission. That's the market we serve. We defend employment. And whether that's a self-insured employer or an insurance carrier, we know what our ideal client profile looks like, and we have a strong sense of what these clients expect from us. Competent legal work, that's table stakes. And really the important metric that our clients care about is responsiveness, accuracy, and our ability to be predictive. It's not enough to be a journalist and just tell clients, here's what's going on in your case, or here's what's happening. That's journalism, right? That's just reading off the facts to them. What's remarkably important in our line of business is to predict the future. And so when you start saying, okay, that's our quality benchmark, we need to be predictive, we need to be responsive, then you say to yourself, okay, how do I measure those things and how do I measure them well? And I want to share with you what we've developed and what we look at to make sure that we are meeting those goals and making those deliverables. And I hope this is applicable to you, whether you're a small law firm or a giant law firm or anywhere in between. I'm sure you've butted up against some of these same challenges. If you're a client or a prospective client, you're like, hey, how does this organization, how does this company measure itself? And then if you're in another line of business and you're just listening to this podcast for any other reason, I want you to start thinking to yourself, how do we measure quality? Because it's really challenging in a service business. And one of the things that's challenging is because the external metrics that you're going to have access to are going to be scattered, sometimes misleading, and sometimes not as useful as you need them to be. And I'll talk about the major source of external metrics first, and then I'll talk about how we measure our performance and how we measure the quality of service that our attorneys are delivering to our clients. So let me just briefly talk about external metrics. What are the benchmarks that we are aware of and that we are getting from the market that we're not generating internally, that we're able to go and obtain? So I'll give you a couple of them. Okay, so the first is direct feedback from your clients, right? I have a lot of great close relationships with clients who we can have authentic conversations, and they'll say, hey, Greg, thanks for doing this. You hit the mark for us. We appreciate the work so-and-so performed for us, or we really like the guidance and advice we got. Like, that's great feedback, okay? Clients will also tell you, hey, you missed the mark, or hey, we expected you to be a little bit more predictive in this case, or Greg, this attorney was not as responsive as they needed to be. That's wonderful, right? And if you can develop the relatedness with your clients where they understand that, hey, we actually want to hear from you about how we're doing, and then they can be open, authentic, and honest with you about how you're doing, like, that's a wonderful circumstance. And that's really what you need to cultivate when it comes to customer or client relatedness. It's an open conversation. It's a two-way street. I mean, my best clients are asking me how they're doing. They say, Greg, is my team responsive to you? Are they getting back to you? Are you getting the information you need? And then they'll feed back information to me about how we're doing. But the truth is, and with hundreds and hundreds of referral sources, that's really rather rare. I do not get phone calls every day from clients giving me their direct feedback. And in fact, I have to pursue it. Okay, so one of the things I can tell you is I have to make it part of my day, my week, my month, to make sure that I'm communicating with clients and I'm inviting them to tell me how we're doing. And I can also tell you that almost every single client phone call that I am on, whether it's I'm just stepping in to answer a question, or I'm answering an intake or initial guidance question, or a general legal question, or they're asking me about legal trends in the marketplace, or it's about a specific case, right? Any of those things. I always end that client phone call by saying this same question, and this is my secret question. I always go, how are we doing for you? Hey, before we get off the phone, can you just tell me what's your impression of how's my team doing? Are we getting back to you on time? Do you feel well supported? Do you have a great sense of where this case is going, where it's headed? Are we doing a good job of predicting the future? I'll ask those questions. And I usually say, hey, are we hitting the ball for you? Like, that's like almost one of my classic questions I always ask to try to prompt that response. Now, I get it. Sometimes clients are on a phone call, they get caught a little flat-footed with that question, like, oh, Greg, I haven't really done a comprehensive review of all the work you're doing for us, so I don't have the answer to you right now. Or they'll say, oh, Greg, everything's fine, right? And that's not useful, right? That's not giving me actionable information, but I always ask that question. And anytime I sit in with attorneys on phone calls, or we're doing a file review, or we're doing a portfolio discussion with clients, everybody knows Greg's last question is going to be, hey, are we hitting the ball for you? How are we doing? So that's so important. The second thing I do with clients is every quarter, we send our clients a scorecard, and we tell them, here's how many cases we're defending for you. Here's the outcomes we're getting. Here's the stage of litigation all these cases are in. Here's how much you spent with me. Here's the breakdown of how much you spent here. And so this isn't an invoice. This is what I call it, a scorecard. And I send it out quarterly, and I send it to my top clients. My top 50 get this scorecard. It looks pretty. It's generated from our computer system, our proprietary computer system, but the actual report they see is generated in a tool called Power BI, which is an analytics tool that's published by Microsoft. And so they get this nice graph, and I call it a scorecard because I said to the designer, like, I want this thing to fit on an 8.5 by 11-inch sheet of paper, one PDF page. I want it to be straightforward. I want it to give a snapshot of the work we're doing for them. And I'm using this as a trigger because when you get that from me every quarter, you also get an invite, and it says, hey, I'd like to meet with you to talk about this scorecard. I'd like to meet with you to talk to you about how we're doing for you. Now, the truth is, most clients do not accept that invitation. Most of them say, look, I'm too busy. Thanks for the scorecard. Everything's good. I'll see you next month, right? I'll see you next quarter, because I send them out quarterly. But it's an invite. And, I think it's very important to always be asking the market to give you that feedback. Now, we have some other sources of external benchmarking or information. And there are some industry benchmarking that's going on that we participate in. So we piloted, and we were one of the first firms that got involved with a third-party administrator program. The third-party administrator is called Gallagher Bassett, and they have a program called Legal Score. And we were one of the very first law firms that said, yeah, we want to participate in this attorney benchmarking system that you're developing. We want to help you develop it. We actually pay money towards it, so it's really an investment in making sure that this benchmarking is done well. And this is a third-party administrator, so it's an insurance-adjacent company that's administering cases and administering litigation and handling litigation. And we ask them to benchmark us, and they will provide us scores. And they provide a pretty granular data set that we're able to parse, again, using a Power BI tool. We can go through that data and we can see how we are trending, how we're benchmarking in terms of the client satisfaction with the work that we're doing. Other third-party administrators like Sedgwick also have attorney benchmarking systems. And because we do litigation on a large scale, commercial litigation on a large scale, we are a participant in, I think it's about more than 50 different electronic bill submission portals or systems. And each one of those will provide you with benchmarking about how your invoicing process is going, how many appeals you're taking, and those types of things. So that's a source of industry feedback. Now, from my perspective, I discount usually a lot of that benchmarking, or it's not as useful as a direct client input. And the reason for that is because those benchmarking systems, the ones that are being used by the largest third-party administrators and the largest carriers, are generally looking only at closed case data. They don't look at live open cases. They look at cases that have already been closed. And I get why they do that, because they feel like, well, that litigation has come to a conclusion. We can look at this holistically from beginning, middle, and end. We can see how it ended up, and then we can run analytics on that and then provide that as a benchmark. And I understand that that's why they do that, and I understand the utility of that from their perspective. But from my perspective, cases that are closed, like that's in the rearview mirror. And sometimes they've been closed for 6 months by the time they get into the benchmarking systems. And so it's really trying to drive the car by looking in the rearview mirror, and you really can't do that. When I send my quarterly scorecards to clients, I'm using live cases. I'm using open and active cases. Yes, I measure and will provide them with statistics on closed files and the important metrics, things like time to close, time on desk, time spent, all of those types of things. But really looking at your current work in process, I think that's even better than looking at closed files. And the industry seems to be benchmarking around closed cases. I think it's because it's easier to run analytics. The data is settled. You're looking at past trends. But again, those are all lagging indicators. Those are not leading indicators. Those are not telling you what's going to happen next. So it's tough to adjust quality to things that happened or closed 6 months or a year ago. So there is some industry benchmarking that you can compare yourself to. And in a broader sense, there are some industry groups, and the CLM, the Claims Litigation Management Organization, theclm.org, publishes a study every other year, it seems. I think the most recent one was 2023. And that will give you some broad industry benchmarking that you can compare yourself to as a law firm to make sure that you're in the norm. But again, that data is a little old. When I look at the methodology that data is utilized, or who's asked questions about law firm performance, it's not a huge subset. I think it's less than 100 participants that provide the data for that study. So I do think it's probably the best study, and it's every couple of years, so you can start to compare over time what the industry is saying about how law firms are performing for them. But again, you're looking at data that I think comes from a rather small sample. And again, it's usually a few years out of date by the time it gets published. So that's, another source. But those are the sort of external benchmarks that you can expect or you should be looking to. And, if you're not in the legal industry, you're not in the insurance defense industry like I am, you've got to find in your market segment and, what are the right external benchmarks to follow. And then, you get into the bigger problems, right? So those benchmarks, you got to think, and I want you to vet them carefully. One of the biggest challenges that I have, and I've talked about this in prior podcasts, is that defense attorneys are extremely competitive people. They do not share their data willingly with their competitors. So we do have to rely on some of these aggregators or these third-party administrators who are putting together information or billing system information, because in my experience, the defense attorneys are not comfortable sharing their numbers with each other and saying, yeah, here's what our spend is, and here's our average time on desk, and here's how fast we're getting closures in these types of litigated matters. Generally not shared. Those things are kept kind of considered almost trade secrets in this industry. So again, it might depend on your industry how open it is, how much information is published. But in mine, and not only when another defense firm tells us what they're doing, I'm a little skeptical because I recognize that there's an opportunity there for them to try to change the narrative. Now, we do read publications and subscribe to them, like the lawyer newspapers that publish basic financial information about defense firms. But again, I'm very skeptical of how well sourced that is and how vetted that truly is. So I think that's a little bit about external benchmarking, or what we're doing externally to do some measurements. Now let's turn to internal measurements, and this is to me equally important, if not more important. We have an incredibly robust internal auditing and measurement system here at Lois, and we started from day one with the idea that, hey, we're going to grow, right? We're going to build and build, and we have. From starting in 2015 to today, I mean, we've done a tremendous progression, tremendous amount of growth. But the biggest challenge, I think, is as you grow, as you get bigger, and as you try to serve a broader market and try to serve that market more deeply, can you keep your quality level high? The attorney's reputation, your credibility, the experience that you've developed, and the outcomes you've obtained, like that is your marketing right there. That's what draws people in. And there's nothing worse than drawing in a great client, an ideal client profile client, who comes and places work with you, and then 6 months later says, wait a second, you guys used to be doing great work and you're not doing great work anymore. Or we came to you because of your stellar reputation and we're not feeling that we're getting that service, right? That's a nightmare. That's the opposite of what you're trying to develop. So internal measurement is an important investment. Here at Lois, we have 4 full-time people, and we took some of our most senior people and we built out our own auditing function. And we built out this function with 2 ideas in mind. The first one, obviously, is scale. Keeping standards high as you scale is a tremendous challenge. It's probably the biggest challenge that law firms face. I know, we could talk about recruiting, you could talk about cash flow, you could talk about, labor, the labor market in general. All these things are challenges for us. But really, keeping your standards high and keeping your quality level high, that's our actual most important job. Like that is job one. If we're not doing that, nothing else is really going to matter. And that's why I think investing in an auditing function, investing in an auditing department, and deploying the right professionals, the professionals with the right amount of experience, the right amount of seasoning, the analytical mind to do it, and also the background. Like they have to have a legal background. They have to be able to review a file, a case that's in active litigation, and say, are we doing everything we should be doing? Is this meeting standards? Is this exceeding standards? Looking for the moments where the attorneys are being creative, where advocacy is truly being demonstrated. Like that's the most important thing for us to be measuring. And so that's tough to measure, right? Because every case comes in and they're a little bit like a snowflake. They all have their own little different permutation, and they all have different combinations of who's the claimant, who's the attorney they selected, who's the judge it's pending before, what's the medical treatment they've obtained, what's been their personal experience or reaction to the medical care or the psychiatric care that they've obtained. So like these cases all have varying outcomes. It's not as easy as you might think to go, hey, it's all cookie cutter litigation. It's a conveyor belt. We're just measuring widgets. This is a little more challenging than that. And so, when we built out the auditing department here, we decided early on, like, this is not something that you can just throw in a new person or someone who's inexperienced with our specific area of law. You need someone who's got great experience with this area of law, who can really test and see if you're delivering service consistent with your standards. So they need to know your internal standards, right? They need to maybe be the people who help set those standards, and they have to be good communicators. And so that's a tough role to fill. And so what we've discovered is we've taken some of our most senior people and our most experienced people, and we've put them into this measurement department. All right, what do we measure? Well, this cannot be simply a checklist, right? That's not useful. If it was just a checklist, I mean, it would be something the computer could do by itself or AI could do for you. So it's got to be more than a checklist, because we have to look at how accurate is the work that we're providing and how useful or actionable are the next actions or the predictions that we're making about what's going to happen in this litigation in the future, right? So these are sophisticated questions. This is not as simple as, you're measuring call center performance and it's how fast did someone get on the phone and how quickly did they get off that phone call and answer that customer's question. Like, this is a lot more involved than that, but it's not impossible. So what we have is we've built out a very robust department that's staffed with people who, are good litigators, who know how litigation works, and then B, have the heart and the commitment to say, look, our role here is to help make sure these clients are well served. I mean, they are here to help guarantee client success. So that's a special type of person. And I would tell you, if you're thinking about building out a department like this is the place where you've really got to be thoughtful about exactly the right kind of person to be in that role or that function. All right. Now, next thing you should think about is what's the pace or tempo that you are going to be reviewing matters. And now this is going to depend on your practice. Our practice is relatively fast paced, and we'll open up more than 400 cases every month, new cases. We're going to close several hundred cases every month, right? So this is a busy, busy practice with a lot of moving parts. The average attorney here is going to carry between 70 and I'd say maybe 100 cases, with the median being way closer to 70 than 100. But how do you meaningfully test? How do you meaningfully check enough cases? And so our answer is, you've got this auditing department has to audit at least one case a week for every attorney and every paraprofessional. Now here, we're over 50 attorneys. We're more than 50 paraprofessionals. So right off the bat, and each one of them is getting at least one case audited a week. So you know that we're doing several hundred, 200 or so audits every single month. 200 cases are going to be reviewed. And these reviews are not, in my opinion, if it's just a check the box exercise, it's not worth investing your time and money in it. The exercise has to say, wait a second, if this didn't meet standards, that auditor needs to put in their notes and send the notes to the handling attorney or paraprofessional. Here's what needs to be fixed, or here's the standard that was violated, or here's what you need to do to get this case back on the curve. So in other words, this can't be just a measurement exercise. It has to be relatively prescriptive as well. And that's an important component to making sure that this is going to actually add value to you as either the business owner or the leader at the law firm, and also your clients. Now, clients do not pay for this service. So this is another reason why I think we're a bit of a rare bird in that we actually do this. Clients in general will not pay for attorneys to double check their own work, right? We're billing our clients for our time and attention. And if I told clients, oh, and by the way, I'm also going to bill you for this other department I have, which checks the work of every attorney every week, they'd say, no, Greg, get it right the first time, right? They don't want to pay for that. I wouldn't want to pay for that. I wouldn't want to hire an attorney to write my will and then them say, oh, and by the way, you also have to pay for this other attorney to check on me, right? That's a little ridiculous. I get it. So this is a cost to the law firm, or I would call this an investment, not a cost, that you do not get to pass through to your clients. It can't show up on a client bill, and it doesn't show up on a client bill. So this is something that you got to be committed to, right? It's also a project that I'm going to tell you, if you're going to put an auditing or measurement function into your law firm, you should do it at the right scale. You know, when I had 5 attorneys working for me, or even 10 attorneys working for me, I did not need a robust auditing function with multiple people, and our function also has an attorney involved in it. I wouldn't tell you that you need to take, one of your most seasoned attorneys and 4 of your most seasoned paraprofessionals and put them into this department. And that's not a good use of your resources at that point, because, with 5 attorneys, when I was leading a group so small, I could review everything. I'd be CC'd on every email, and I kind of had my fingers in every case, and I would direct traffic, and I would make sure that everyone was sort of meeting the standards. And you could do that. You get to 10 attorneys, that's really tough to do. And I can tell you, once you get beyond 10 attorneys, you really need to start thinking about, how are you going to measure their performance? How are you going to measure their progress? How are you going to measure and make sure that they're doing the right things and meeting your standards? Because again, your reputation, it's your most important thing you have, and it's also very fragile, and it ages like milk. You can't coast by on the work you did 15 years ago. When I look on attorney websites and the only reported decision they have on their website is from 2002, and they're not posting wins and client outcomes every single day and every single week on their website, they're coasting, right? They're cruising on their past reputation, but you have to be building that reputation every day. And so, again, I think this is incredibly important. Now, the other side of measurement is what do you actually do with it, right? So you get this great, you've put, let's say, a measurement department in place, you're getting great audits done. Now you've got to deliver it to people, and that's another challenge. In our practice, it's every single week you're receiving an audit from the auditing team, and then we're doubling back to make sure that any change or suggestion that they're making was considered and perhaps implemented in the case, right? So that's time and attention as well. Ultimately, we've built this into the way that we measure our attorney performance. And, there's a number of things we look at when we're measuring attorney performance internally, but I can rattle some of them off. So some of them are very easy, right? And I can tell you, every defense firm has shares at least one measure of attorney performance that's pretty clear, and that's your timekeeper metrics on that person. What is the rate that they're billing at? How many billable hours are they actually billing? What is their utilization? Are clients actually paying their bills, right? So are we actually recovering what we're actually providing in terms of service to clients, right? So those basic timekeeper metrics, the utilization numbers, the effective rate numbers, and of course, how much time that they're actually billing, like how productive are they? Looking at individual productivity, that's a big piece of it. I would tell you that every defense firm is measuring that because they have to, because they're invoicing their clients. They got to put it on an invoice, so I'm sure they're tracking it. So I think that's, table stakes. I'm not going to spend any more time talking about it, but that is absolutely a component. The second component of looking at attorney performance at Lois is always going to be looking at those audit progress. Now, I've had attorneys say to me, and particularly when we first implemented the auditing program here, the client success department was something that people were scared of, and they said, I don't like, I'm getting a report card, I'm being judged. And I said, okay, just lean back into this a little bit. Let these audits sort of develop. Don't reject it out of hand. Be open, right? Be creative, be open to criticism and feedback, and see what happens, right? And of course, now that has to be balanced with that audit department has got to give comprehensive audits that are relatively correct, right? If they're saying things that are glaringly wrong, they're not going to have any credibility. And then they have to give actionable intelligence to the handling attorney or paraprofessional so that they feel like they're getting value from participating and reviewing these audits. So, they're getting them pretty consistently. And what we've discovered is if you want to implement this in your practice, I think there's two critical things that you've got to do. Now, the first one is you've got to drive alignment around the idea of measurement. And you've got to tell attorneys hey, I want you to be the best you can be. This is for your professional growth and development. We're not just doing this because we're mean and we want to peek in on you and see what you're doing and, take these snapshots of you. That's not our goal. Our goal is to give you meaningful feedback. So take this for something that's going to help you with your development, right? So that's number one. You've got to drive alignment around that idea. And if you don't, it's going to get rejected. And it's not going to be something people are going to trust. And the second thing is you got to think about the pace of this. Delivering feedback every single week, delivering an audit every single week. That's incredibly important. People need to understand what the tempo is, understand that we're looking at this over time, right? One low audit score or one super high one, right? I did have one attorney who got a perfect audit, and I was like, congratulations, she's a wonder kid. I said, that's amazing. I don't think I would always score perfect. That's amazing. But understanding or helping them or leading them to recognize, we're looking at this over time. This is not a one-time snapshot. This is something that we're going to look at over the course of a year or years. And what we want to see from you as an attorney is slow but steady progress. I want to see your audit scores. And by the way, here internally, our metrics are rigorous. We're right around the sevens. There's a weighted score of all the factors that are reviewed, and most people are scoring around a 7. Okay, and what I want to see over time is you start as a 7.1, and then 6 months later you're a 7.6, and a year later you're at 8.2. I want to see a slow progress. I want to see that as we're giving you this feedback, you're doing something with it. You're implementing these ideas. You're getting more aligned on standards, and we're more consistent in the service and the product that we are delivering to clients, right? So, those two key concepts, if you're going to implement this in your practice, one is you got to drive alignment around the idea that like this is important and this is for you. And then two, you've got to set the tempo and explain to people that this is part of a long process. This is not any one day or one bad case or one outcome or that's not going to throw you off. We're looking at the big picture. And I think that's an important concept to share with them. All right. So, we've talked about some of the things that we go into when we look at attorney performance. I already said, productivity is one of them, and timekeeper metrics. The second one is audit scores. Here at Lois, the third one is their professional development. Every attorney and paraprofessional that works here has an internal professional development tracker that they keep up to date. And that tracker identifies or allows them to keep track of how many firm-provided in-firm CLEs they're taking every month. So continuing legal education, incredibly important to attorneys. If you work here at Lois, you're getting at least 3 continuing legal education credits every single month that you work here. It also tracks other things. So it's going to also track, hey, are you attending office hours? Here at Lois, every single partner has an open door office policy. They post office hours, and we encourage attorneys to come to those office hours. We encourage them to do it, and we actually give them billable credit for going and talking to other more senior and more seasoned attorneys, it's all the partners, about questions or concerns they have in their cases, right? The kinds of questions that, maybe you don't know the answer to, like, would you, should I, have you ever seen one of these? Are you familiar with this judge? How do you think this argument's going to land, right? Like those kinds of questions. Here at Lois, we give people billable hour credit for going and talking to more seasoned people, and we give them a place to track that. We also hold regular case roundtables here and, again, give out billable credit to attorneys for attending those. So this professional development tracker, it doesn't just track CLEs. It also gives them a place to show us like, hey, I'm investing in myself. I'm going to office hours. I'm attending case roundtables. I'm participating in things like we track things like participation in mock trial program that we have here. We're really trying to get a picture of how committed this person is themselves to their own professional development. And so when we look at those 3 things, we look at those basic timekeeper metrics, we look at how is the audit performance doing over time, and then we look at what are they doing in terms of their professional development. Are they taking advantage of the opportunities here? Are they investing in themselves, so that they can be a better advocate for their clients? They can be more persuasive. They can provide better service. Like those are the 3 the big pieces that we look at. And then the last thing we always look at is alignment with our vision, alignment with our firm values. Our firm values are creativity, advocacy, professionalism, and service. And we're also going to look at those things. So when we meet with an attorney on an annual basis for their annual performance review, or we meet with them on a quarterly basis and give them what we call a quarterly professional development message, we're looking at all of those factors so that we can provide someone the best possible feedback that we can give them, because that's what they need. When we look at a firm and you say, hey, quality control is important to me, Greg, and I'd love to do measurement. Well, the next part is, okay, how do you deliver that to the person at a meaningful pace? And how do you make it actionable and at a pace that you can then follow up on it? And, from our perspective with 50 attorneys, with auditing every single one of them every single week, what we've discovered is the quarterly performance development message with them, that's about the right amount of time. You can't do it every month. It's just too much. Quarterly is about right. Even quarterly is a challenge because when we're seeing some big trend issues or we're seeing a skill gap, it might take them a couple months to actually show meaningful progress towards addressing that skill gap that they may have. And so, you've got to be thoughtful about like what is the development timeline? What is a reasonable development timeline? And then build your measurement system around that. I can tell you from my experience, meeting them every month with attorneys or paraprofessionals to address, standards keeping in their practice, probably too much. We did that for a long time, and I think it was too much because, again, just not enough time elapses, not enough time for them to adapt and evolve in between those meetings. I think quarterly is about the right pace. And then annually, there should be a comprehensive meeting. Annually, we should be showing this person, here's the investment that you've made in yourself. Here's the progress that you've obtained, and here's what this means, right? And that's a very important conversation that needs to be delivered on a regular basis. So, when we talk about measurement here, we're not just looking at the easy things, and we're not just relying on what clients are telling us. We really need to dig a lot deeper ourselves to make sure that we're looking at enough so that we can draw our own conclusions about whether or not we're hitting our own standards. So again, this is a hugely important part of our practice. I think in any business, no matter what, if you open a restaurant, you have to pay mystery shoppers to come in there and dine in your restaurant and give you unvarnished feedback about what it's like. In our business, because it's a service business and because it's so tailored to both the client and the circumstances of the case, you've really got to invest and put the time and effort in to make sure that you're measuring, to make sure that your mission is being upheld and that the people that are serving your clients are meeting your standards. Very important. I'm glad I had a chance today to sit down and kind of talk about this topic with you and sort of explore with how we think about it. I hope you found this useful, and until next time, have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Running the Defense. Remember, while I am a lawyer, I'm not your lawyer. Unless we've signed something with a lot of small print and billable hours attached, there is no attorney-client relationship formed by you listening to this podcast. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, so don't take it as legal advice, unless, of course, it helps you win an argument at dinner. See you next time.